Hello, everybody, and welcome to Niners Talk. I'm John, joined by my brother Tim and my brother from another brother, Brian.
Brother from another brother.
Brother from another brother, yes.
To quote
Nice.
the great movie Clueless, this is California, not Kentucky.
Yes, brother from another mother, Brian.
Hi.
Welcome to our inaugural podcast. We would love it if you would leave us a review, give us a like, or subscribe. But, how are we feeling? Tim, how are we feeling today?
We're feeling good. We're feeling that it's Friday. We're feeling that training camp is just a month away. And we're feeling like football needs to get here soon because even with baseball, the Giants making a nice run right now. I feel like we're a little bit of a sports desert.
Yeah. Brian, how you feeling?
It's right before the holiday weekend. I'm feeling good. It's hot out here in California today, but yeah, surviving.
I have to say, I'm feeling pretty good. It's, like you said, it's during a holiday weekend, Friday night. Plus, we're going to talk a little Niners. So today we are talking about the season 2022 recap and our intro to the podcast. And really, this is going to start with how we became Niners fans. And Tim, we'll start off with you. How did you become a Niners fan?
Well, I became a Niners fan. I just by growing up in the right place at the right time. Growing up just north of San Francisco, a little town called Sausalito. One of my earliest memories is the 49ers in 1981, making their epic Cinderella run and being in the living room with all the family and our tiny little television on the TV cart that we used to be able to wheel around and the radiators that we had to get just so. But watching the catch and the Super Bowl after that, it's been year in, year out, a constant Niner fanaticism.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your fandom?
Well, John, you need to give me a benchmark on what a 10 is. Is 10 that I watch every game or 10 is that, I'm stalking George Kittle?
I would say 7 is you're stalking George Kittle.
Okay, then I'm going to give
So,
myself a 7. I'll give myself a 7. I don't know what George Kittle had for breakfast. I don't know what his girlfriend looks like, and I don't know his address. I certainly watch every game, every preseason game. I try to read up as much as I can on training camp, even the mini camps. So yeah, I'll give myself 7.5. And plus, my basement is absolutely decorated with Niners paraphernalia.
I would actually also say that George Kittle is married. He does not have a girlfriend. We do not want to cause rumors where there are none.
That's why I'm a 7.5. If I was an 8, I would have known that.
You're more 9.5, but that's neither here nor there. Brian, how did you become a Niners fan?
Let's see. My dad moved here from Asia in the late 60s. And then he was just telling me about the Niners being a constant doormat in the 70s to the Cowboys. And I guess when they got really good, as Tim was saying, in the early 80s, that's when I think everybody in the Bay Area jumped on the bandwagon. So I've been a 49ers fan ever since. I think the first game that I honestly remember watching on TV was probably the Super Bowl against the Bengals. Was that the 81-82 season? That's the first game I honestly remember watching. But then after that, it was so easy, I think anyone living in the Bay Area to want to follow the 49ers. I know they won their 5 Super Bowls in the span of 15 years. So yeah, it was a great experience and great time. So that's how I became a fan. And yeah, we've been fans ever since.
And what would you say your level of fandom is?
Well, it's got to be below 10 because I'm definitely not. If we're going to say Tim's a 7.5, then
Tim's not a 7. Tim's a 9.5. Come on.
I'm a conservative. My estimate was conservative. Yeah, but I'm a liberal at heart. But I'm conservative.
You don't want to show your true nature. If I was to rate you, Tim, you'd be a 10 because you know almost everything and anything that it has to do with the Niners. And I've seen your basement. So
thanks. I don't get out a lot. I don't meet other people. Really, I probably should, get another hobby. I appreciate you saying that.
I would say my fandom is probably closer to an 8. If we put Tim at a 10, because that's what I believe he is, I would probably be an 8. Although I do have season tickets to the Niners, but I only go, honestly, maybe 2 games a year. and probably 2 games on the road a year. So I don't go that often. But yeah, I would probably rate myself an 8, John, just because.
All right. Well, for me, I mean, obviously, my brother and I grew up in the same household, so we definitely started becoming fans at the same time. But for me, where it really kind of struck home was when we found out that there was this thing called the Junior 49er Minor Club. And if you went to this place in San Francisco at a certain day and a certain time, they had these booster like folks, and you got free tickets to the Niners game. So we went, we got our free passes, and then we go to the game, and it was against the Los Angeles Rams. And I don't know, Tim might remember this better than I do. It was the first time they had beaten the Rams in like forever, or the first time they beat them 2 times in a row. That
So to test my level 10 of fandom, John, in 1981, the 49ers beat the Rams for the first time in 9 tries, and was the first time, I believe, since 1965 that they swept them in their East. So there you are. But no,
Well,
please
there
go
you
on
go.
with the tickets, because there's a good
So-
story behind the tickets.
So we get these free tickets, and we get to Candlestick Park. And I had never been to Candlestick Park other than a baseball game. And the baseball game, there's good seats everywhere. I mean, you couldn't at Candlestick, it was a big bowl. You couldn't not see the field. So we get there, and what I didn't realize was at Candlestick, they had a thing that went out towards the 50. Like these portable stands.
These portable stands that came out, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
of
I
thing.
re-
And our tickets were in the corner by the portable stand, so we could only see to like 20-yard line on one side. Everything else was blocked. They were like, whoa.
We had no idea what was going on. I mean, this is before the Jumbotron. So the
Yeah.
only thing you knew that if the crowd yelled, something good happened.
Yeah.
Or somebody, would have one of their radios and they'd say, oh, yeah, the Rams did this, and the 49ers did that. You're like, great. Wish we could see it. We should have.
It was like, I'm like, this is why these tickets are free. Because they're
this is where
horrible.
right.
But the Niners play the Rams like really tight. We saw a touchdown. It was right in front of us. I was 8, Tim was 6, but the feeling was awesome. Like, Candlestick had that unique smell. It's only Candlestick, like stale hot dogs and beer and
Peanut
malted.
shells.
Yeah,
and-
exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. And then the last play of the game was also right in front of us as well. I mean, it was either, so you probably remember this better than I do. The Rams were driving, and the Niners defense broke up the last play, which I think is what it was. And I remember the Rams were like kind of bummed.
Would you like me to tell you how it ended?
Yes, there you go.
Do you
So-
do you just remember this? Do you just remember this from memory, or is this like where
Some of it from memory, and some going back and reading way too many 49ers books. Well, I'm not saying there's no such thing as too many 49ers books. And also, with the magic of YouTube, you can find the game. And what had happened was there's 2 things that happened. One was about the day, maybe 2 days or about 1 day before, the Rolling Stones had played a concert at Candlestick, and the field was in terrible shape from the concert. I guess people just ripping up the turf. So I think the kicker it might have been Frank Corral. I don't remember the kicker's name, but he had a chance to tie it at the end. And the field around where the infield was, where they would sod over on the, I think it was the south end of the stadium, the sodding was so bad that Corral just could not get the kicker. Rams kicker could not get solid footing, and he missed the field goal that would have sent the game in overtime. And 49ers win. There was also a great game by Fred Dean. He had his coming out a game against the Cowboys a couple weeks before, but I go back and watched the highlights, and you just saw what a dominant force he was. I know we're getting into the week a little on 49er trivia, but yes, I do remember the terrible seats that you couldn't see past the 40-yard line, and then the missed field goal.
Yeah, apparently Fred Dean was at the game, but we didn't actually see it. So anyway, but that's
Yeah,
how
then
I became a 49ers fan. Sorry, Bryce.
Yeah, if you go look on the internet and just see the old configuration of the stadium, it was terrible. I just kind of remember that. You're right. They did share the baseball stadium with the Giants. So the all the sight lines were off. You did. I remember seeing those portable grandstands come out, and yeah, you guys had the worst of it.
Oh, they were
Imagine.
horrible. It was like so bad. Anyway, but that was my very first Niners game. The very first time I became a real fan. And then I would say my fandom is about a 9. It's wavered over the years during like the dark ages before Harbaugh came back. It was down in the 3s. Like, I'm like, I don't even know what they're doing. But it's now up to a 9 because the Niners are good. So that brings
Let
us
me ask
to
you
like,
guys one more thing. Let me ask
Mhm.
you one more thing. So, were both your parents Niners fans? Like, were they like diehards where they had to
My mother was more,
religiously on Sundays?
yeah. Our mother was more of a football fan growing up in Columbus, Ohio. She had watched Ohio State football and Woody Hayes. So she came out with a better understanding of the game. My father was much more of a baseball fan, but would still watch the 49ers. But growing up, we would do a couple of, we'd always have, being a Catholic, we'd always have, church on, Sunday morning. But when Mass ended, we would come home and we would have this huge spread of food for the 49ers game. And that just became a thing. It was just a Sunday ritual. And the fact that the 49ers were so successful, just a lot of wonderful memories all through the 80s of the Sunday afternoons in front of the television.
That's funny. Like, my dad was like the first 49ers fan in our household, and that's how me and my brother became Niners fans. And then it's now since integrated to my mom, who was a big time Niners fan too. So she'll religiously watch every game. She'll walk around. She has little superstitions of where she'll be or where she'll stand when she's watching these games or what she's holding. And I
It's
know,
only weird if
we
it
all-
doesn't work.
Yeah,
There you
exactly.
go.
Well, that brings us to a nice thing of how Niners talk actually started between the 3 of us. So Tim, do you want to tell a
Yeah.
story?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like you, John, I mean, we followed the Niners and we followed them through the 90s and we followed them through the dark years of Dennis Erickson and Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary. And it was just, I think the two things were kind of tough for me to keep following. It was one is now I live, on the East Coast and I just wasn't in a position to be able to see the games until I was able to get Sunday ticket. So I kind of, dropped off. I had to kind of follow them through the internet and so forth. But when Jim Harbaugh became head coach and they had their run in 2011, which they made their way to the NFC Championship game, they played the New York Giants in the regular season. And it was a nationally broadcast game. And I was at home and it just had a sense, a feel. That game just had a feel to it that I'll call it a vibe that I had not been part of in so many years. It was an October game at Candlestick. The shadows of the stadium were coming across the field. It was a tight game, but it was an exciting game. And it was just the 49ers were trying to establish themselves against the Giants, who were a juggernaut in. The three of us just started texting during that part. And that eventually became Niners talk. And here we are 12 years still talking about the Niners now, making trips to various stadiums to see them.
So I think
Yeah.
probably John, like Tim was like texting me separately, and then Tim was probably texting you separately. And then it kind of just merged together where, well, we're all talking about the same thing and we're all griping or loving the same thing. So let's just put it all together in one little chat. And that's how it got started. So
I was actually in Miami watching the game. I was in a hotel because I had a meeting the next day. And I was like, oh, I'll throw on the Niners Giants game. And Niners were actually had a pretty decent winning record. I kind of noticed them because they had beaten the Lions before. The Lions were supposed to be pretty good, but I remember Harbaugh coming off the field, like laughing the Lions coach. The Lions coach took issue with it. I'm like, I kind of like this Harbaugh guy. And then with the Giants, I'm like, wow, this is a good football team. And then D was playing awesome, and Patrick Willis was all over the place. And it was like back to fun football. And of course, that season became magical because we didn't expect anything out of it. And they beat the Saints. They go to the NFC Championship game. And then they go to the Super Bowl next year. So that's really, I think, how Niners Talk started. One thing that my brother and I do every now and again, which we're also going to do on this podcast, is we have this little saying that we say to each other. So I go, "Hey, Tim, Niners, Niners."
And do you want
And
to tell
what
that
that
origin, or should I?
Yeah, what that comes from is Robin Williams had this bit that he did live from Rainbow Room in San Francisco, but he did this whole thing where he showed the Niners hat and the entire crowd was like, "Niners," and he's like, "What? I like the team." And everybody loves the 49ers, but he does this bit where it's like, you don't remember when the Niners are bad with a quarterback with like, well, hike
Well, hike when the energy's right.
So that's where Niners come. So Niners, Brian.
What was it he also said? I think one of his also bits was, we used to have a quarterback who'd go up to the center and go, "Why haven't you called me?"
So anyway, Niners, Tim, Niners, Brian. So we should probably talk about 2022. So overall thoughts on 22's season, Brian?
A successful season in the fact they navigated their way and they made it to the NFC Championship game. Yeah, if I remember correctly, they didn't start off too well. They were probably a game under 500 or something, but they came through and they did have a couple of changes in quarterback, from Trey Lance going down to Jimmy G going down to Brock Purdy. So I think overall a pretty successful season. Obviously in the Bay Area here, the expectation is always quest for 6. So they had that 10 years ago, and they just feel like it's been unfinished business ever since Harbaugh came. And maybe it was this year. I think we all thought this was the year. 2022 was the year, and it just didn't happen. So I mean, overall, a successful season. If I have to look at it from a bird's eye point of view, that we did pretty good. We saw some really great games. The Niners pulled out some great victories, but it just didn't come through in the end. And I'm sure we'll talk about the NFC Championship game, but I think overall successful in the fact that they made it as far as they did. But let's see what happens again in 23.
So what were your thoughts on the 2022 season?
If I were to summarize 2022 with 49ers, I think the title would be next man up. The Niners, and I think this speaks to their organization, they were very high on Trey Lance coming in. Of course, he gets injured in week 2. Jimmy G comes in. He plays until the Dolphins game, and he gets hurt. And then Brock Purdy comes in, and he has a run. So I was just, when I was watching them week in and week out, and they get into the playoffs, it was, how long can they sustain this? I mean, are we going to see Brock Purdy exposed as the rookie, as Mr. Irrelevant? But unfortunately, the Niners just frankly just ran out of quarterbacks. But I was pretty taken with how they could bring players in like a Brock Purdy, or how Jimmy G can come in having literally no training camp, no preseason, and come in and perform. And then also bringing in someone like Christian McCaffrey, who, it takes a couple weeks for him, but all of a sudden we get into the Rams game that they played down at SoFi Stadium, and he throws for a touchdown, he runs for a touchdown, he catches, and it was like, how that team gels. And so I think that speaks a lot to the organization. Ultimately, they fell short against the Eagles, but I think it just shows, the Niners have a lot of firepower, but I think the overall culture in that organization comes from the top down. And I think that's why the Niners are going to continue to be successful for the near future.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the 2022 season was really fairly successful. And you compare it to the 21 season, which was such a roller coaster. We were up, we were down, it was just crazy. But this season, start off a little on the slow side, but then, I mean, they just went on such a run at the end. They looked so dominant. And you just go and you think, okay, well, they had some bad luck in the NFC Championship and they just don't get there. So, all in all, fairly successful season. You just can't argue with the last three out of 4 years in the NFC Championship, and once they're in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's pretty good. Cleveland hasn't been the AFC Championship for, I don't know. I think it was
January of '88. I think was the last time. No, beg your pardon. It was January of 1990.
Oh, when Elway broke them.
That was here we go with useless trivia again. The drive was January of '87, and then there was the fumble, which was January of '89, and then they played. Well, actually, no, a big part. It was no, I'm getting my years mixed up. 7 was the drive. '88 was the fumble. 90 they played it again, and the Browns and the Broncos played each other again. In January of 1990, the Broncos won, but then they got their hides kicked by the 49ers in Super Bowl 24. So, anyway, Cleveland. So yeah, going to your point as I digress down the Browns history. No, I absolutely right. Obviously, we all would have loved the sixth Super Bowl, but yeah, the 49ers year in year, with the exception of 2020, they've been contenders.
Yeah. So Tim, do you have a favorite game from 2022?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with it was week 15. It was a Thursday night game against the Seahawks in Seattle. And I think favorite game because in Seattle, obviously, Seahawks rivalry. The Niners have had not much success over the last 10, 12 years in Seattle. Brock Purdy goes in, performs very well. He and George Kittle, I think he had 2 touchdown passes to Kittle. But we found out later he was really playing hurt. And I felt that established himself as not only somebody who can perform when they're in a lot of discomfort, but perform in a very tough place to play. So I think with that idea, I'll circle the Seahawks game as one of my favorite games.
Brian, what about you?
I'm looking through the schedule here. There's so many to choose from. I think for me, I'm going to say the October 30 game against the Rams at SoFi Stadium. So I think they beat them then 31-14. So I think that was the start of that winning streak. So remember, like the week before, they just got destroyed at home by the Chiefs. And week 8, they go to LA where they've been, pretty good as of late. And that's the start of that winning streak. And they beat them 31-14. So that to me is one of the turnaround games of the season where they just played really well. And that was the game, I think, where they got CMC, right?
That's where, that was his kind of coming out. He played against the Chiefs, but he was only in for, this or that. And I mean, obviously he wasn't, Patrick Mahomes went Patrick Mahomes. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, for me, my favorite game was when they went to Mexico City for a away game against the Arizona Cardinals. And it was anything but. I mean, it was basically a home game for the Niners. And the Niners just obliterated the poor Arizona Cardinals. I mean, it was just, it was so
one of my
bad.
favorite. I'm cutting. Yeah, I know I'm cutting in here, John. One of my favorite moments was, George Kittle. There was a Mexican wrestler who George Kittle, says, well, when I get a first down and I do that little move where he kind of points, he's like, no, I got it from this wrestler in Mexico. And in the pre-games, he runs over, gives the guy a big hug. The guy gives Kittle a wrestling mask.
Yeah.
And it just I should have felt at that point, I think this game's already won.
Yeah. I think Kittle had 2 touchdowns that night, right?
I think so. I know at least one. I don't remember if it was 1 or 2.
Yeah, but it was just like they're just going up and down the field. It was just one of those. Wow, this is a fun game to watch. It's not stressful at all. Which leads us.
That was a Monday night game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which leads me to our next thing, which was the most stressful game. And for me, my most stressful game was actually the one I saw in person, which was in Vegas with my brother. And we're down. We had pretty decent seats off of the 20, probably about halfway up in the club section. And so we can see just about everything. But we were surrounded by Raiders fans. And it was such a back and forth game. It went into overtime. And of course, we had to wait for Robbie Gould to kick a field goal. But yeah, that was the most stressful one because it was just, we were there in person. And the Raiders were playing it like their Super Bowl. And Jarrett Stidham had a great game, but the Niners ended up pulling it out. And what a game.
Devontae Adams went nuts.
Yeah. I still don't think it was a catch. He was amazing that game. So, Tim, what about you? Most stressful game?
Most stressful game, since you said the Raiders game, I'm gonna go to divisional playoff against Cowboys. They had two very good teams that were evenly matched. Dak Prescott, mobile quarterbacks have given the 49ers fits for years, and Dak was no exception. He had multiple chances to get that. The Cowboys had multiple chances to either take the lead or really push the game into maybe even overtime. But the 49er defense kept standing up and standing up. But Cowboy defense, I thought Micah Parsons played probably the best game of the year going against McGlinchey. And it was a hard fought game that even when the Cowboys had the ball on their own, I think 10 or something, with only 2 seconds left, I kept thinking, this game's not over. This game is only going to be over when the clock hits 0. And they tried with that, this really strange game, play at the end where they spread the entire field, and 49ers ended up pulling it out. But that to me was the most stressful game because I just think it was such a tight game between two very evenly matched football teams.
Yeah. Brian?
Let's see. Since you guys picked those games, I'm going to go with a loss as the most stressful game. And I know this was a game that you guys went to, but this is the game after Trey Lance got hurt. So week 3 at Denver. That was a game, I think, where every 49ers fan expected the Niners to win. And, with all the firepower at that time, no CMC yet, but that was a game you just thought they were going to win. And they were just going to come out and destroy the Broncos, but it was anything but. I think they had a 7-point lead in the beginning with a touchdown, and then just right after that, it felt like Jimmy G couldn't get the offense going. And if I remember correctly, wasn't there like a safety or something, or like some?
It was. I mean, the final score was 11, so it gives you an idea of what kind of game it was.
Yeah.
So my brother and my aunt lives right outside Denver. And when the schedule came out, she said, "You guys should come out for the game. I have tickets. I'll give them to you. You can stay at our house. Just get to us." We're like, all right. So Tim was kind enough to cash in some miles and gets 2 tickets on United. And we're about 2 weeks out. And my aunt says, "Well, where are you guys going to sit?" We're like, "What do you mean?" Well, I'm going to the game. I'm like,
with all due respect, she is in her 80s, and she might be listening to this. So, let's just be nice and just say, hey, we're both employed. We can afford to buy our own tickets. But yeah, I was a little, oh, okay, that's a change in the itinerary. Okay.
But Tim and I ended up getting great seats underneath the 49ers coaching box and just to the left of Greg Papa, who we got a picture with, and I think was happy that somebody recognized him. Like, hey, there's Greg Papa. Stan, Brad. This guy looked at me like, okay. Yes. But we were underneath.
And for those who don't know who Greg Papa is, who's Greg Papa?
Greg Papa is the radio play-by-play guy for KNBR. So, but we were right underneath the 49ers coaching box, and I wanted to put up a sign and put it on the window that just said, "Call the right play." My brother was like, "Don't you dare." And to this day, I think if I had done that, we would have won.
I think to this day, John, if you had actually done that, I would have called security and said he's affecting the game plan. I would have completely sold you out as my brother, saying he's affecting the game plan. You need to get him out of here. John, I'll meet you at the car.
Yeah, so that brings us to my least favorite.
By the way,
game.
That alone puts me at a 9.5 for my 49ers fandom that I would sell out my brother to not affect the offensive game plan.
Sure. You might have actually gone to 11 on that one. So you need a little bit more. So yeah, for me, the Niners' least favorite game was the one where it just put me into the most foul mood, and that's when they lost to the Falcons. Because they had lost Emmanuel Mosley for the season, kind of inconsequential play in Carolina. They come out, a few times they've ever come out flat. They just never looked in the game. They had turnovers. It was just, they just looked like they're coming off of a road trip. They just looked bad. And I was like, what are you guys doing? It was just like, and it was just one of they get through Monday, listen to the Here's the Catch podcast during my run, reset, and I forgot who we played next.
We played
But
the Chiefs.
Oh, well, that didn't really help my mood either. But that was my my least favorite game. Well, here's what happened when the Chiefs, like we got Christian McCaffrey, so my mood definitely improved from there. So, Brian, did you have a least favorite game from last year?
Well, I mean, it's easy to say the NFC Championship game, but I was actually going to say the Chiefs because we talked about the Broncos. We talked about, now you just talked about the Falcons. I was going to say the Chiefs because the expectation was when they traded for CMC that week. Okay, we have the horses to compete with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. And then you thought it was going to be a better game. You thought it was going to be, or I thought it was going to be a better game. Thought it'd be more competitive. And I think it was probably for the first half, if I remember correctly. But then Mahomes just turned it on in the second half and just killed us. So yeah, that was my also least favorite game.
And Tim?
Well, I know Brian just mentioned it, but I got to go NFC Championship. And, not so much that the 49ers lost, it was that when Purdy went down and Josh Johnson comes in, you thought, okay, well, maybe maybe the defense can just play lights out and Johnson can produce a couple of scoring plays. But when Johnson went out and Purdy went back in, and I watched it just thinking, we have no chance to win. And when you're watching the game like that, as far into the season as you were, with a chance to go to the Super Bowl and not feel that the 49ers could even take a shot, that was it honestly, my soul just felt like it had been sucked out just because it's like a baseball game. It's like, try to go win. Oh, by the way, your right fielder is your starting pitcher. So you knew they really had no chance to win. And nothing against the Eagles. The Eagles are a fantastic ball club. They gave the Chiefs everything they could handle in the Super Bowl. I just would have loved to have come out and say, all right, if the Eagles beat us, I'd rather it just been the Niners giving their all, and the Eagles getting their all. And, by the third quarter, you're just like, that's it. That's the season.
Yeah, it was definitely a letdown.
So I remember in that game, they had that, if we're going to talk about that game, the play that was not ruled a catch, or that was ruled a catch. Like, I think it was right in the first series of the game for Philly.
First series. Yeah.
Yeah, the first series. So that's that every 49ers fan is going to hang their hat on.
Yeah, you could say that. I think Shanahan should have thrown the flag. I think some people from upstairs in the coaching booth should closely and buzz down to Shanahan and say, hey, throw this, challenge this. But that didn't happen. But that's not the reason the 49ers lost. The 49ers lost is because the Eagles made plays than they did, and we didn't have a quarterback. So it's just, that is what it is. So I don't want to be the guy who's going to say, hey, one play would have decided it. We don't know that. We'll never know that.
Yeah. But I think, Tim, I know one game was memorable, which was the Dolphins game. Why was it so memorable, Tim?
So for those who live outside the Bay Area, such as myself and my brother, we have to subscribe to NFL Sunday Ticket, which is now on YouTube and not on DirecTV anymore. But anyway, so I'm watching the Dolphins game, and Jimmy, I'm always I'm a little uptight when I watch the 49ers, as Brian is on.
Oh, you think?
Several times. Like I have, and I'm on record as saying this. I have shown them my stress levels from my smartwatch through my app, and you see them skyrocket during the 49ers games, along with my heart rate. Yes, there is an emotional attachment to the 49ers. But anyway, so the 49ers and the Dolphins are going back and forth. And of course, Garoppolo gets injured. And I immediately jump on Twitter. What is Niners Nation saying? What is the Athletic saying? What is anybody saying? And everything is just like, it looks bad. They call not good. His season's over. And, at this point, we'd already lost a quarterback. We'd lost Trey Lance. So who the hell is Brock Purdy? And I just lost it. I'm done. I'm not watching this team anymore. And I've only done that, maybe 20 or 50 times in the course of my lifetime of being a 49ers fan, of saying I'll never watch this team again. So I turned the game off and I went into another part of my house, which was, the shades were drawn and it was very dark, and it's December in Virginia. So it's cold and gray and everything just reflected my mood. So I sat there for about 10, 15 minutes and all right, I'll check to see what's going on in the game. So I pulled out my smartphone, get on ESPN, and I go to ESPN GameCap, and I see, all right, well, Niners are making a game of it. All right, well, Niners have the lead. All right, Niners got a turnover. So one would think that at this point, I would get up out of this very dark, somber room and go in and turn the game back on with NFL Sunday Ticket, which costs around $350 or something to that effect. No, I decided to stay in this darkened room, I guess because I felt like I needed to have my mood reflected even more so. And I just kept refreshing Gamecast for over 2.5 hours, and they won. And so that's the story.
It's only weird
But
it doesn't
I
work.
will say this: the next game I didn't put on Gamecast. I did actually watch the next game on Sunday Ticket. But if you're looking for a return on investment on Sunday Ticket, I am probably not the case study.
Just so you know, from my own personal recollection, I think the Niners are undefeated when Tim has given up on them. Because I can think of the Bengals last year, the Miami Dolphins this year. Anyway, but moving on, one of the things we're going to do each week is talk about good shit and bad shit. And we're always going to, as optimists, going to talk good shit first. And really, the big one for me is obviously CMC. I have always been a fan. He went to Stanford. He was awesome when he was played for the Panthers. We played him twice when he was with the Panthers, and he was great. Both times. The Panthers were just horrible. So I remember it was about 11 o'clock at night. Maybe it was a Wednesday, and I was looking at Bleacher Report to see what had happened, and I was looking to see if anybody had written something on The Athletic, because the Niners articles started to come out pretty frequently, and all of a sudden it was breaking news. Niners trade for CMC. Like, what? I get on the text string with you guys, and Tim had already gone to sleep, and Brian was, of course, was still up because he's in the West Coast. I'm like, holy shit, we got CMC. But he really was all that he was cracked up to be, or still is. And I remember, obviously the game with the Rams, but really where I thought he is really something special was, and we watched him against the Raiders, was how patient he was running through some of these holes. And you could see how patient he was, and it all of a sudden just explodes through. I'm like, he is just a savant. I don't know how Bobby T helped him at all, but he really was, for me, was one of the biggest high points of the season. Brian, what about you? Some good shit from 2022?
Ooh, I would have to say Brock Purdy. He
Yes.
was someone we did not expect to produce for the Niners. And then, obviously with Jimmy and Trey Lance going down, and he showed wonders. He was able to get the ball to the receivers, and it looks like he's made a pretty good connection with Kittle. So yeah, that was probably, that was some good shit this year. He really gelled really well with the team, and he's proven himself to be a leader and a play caller, and he's led them in games. I think the team's given him a lot of respect, and that's kind of one of the reasons why, if he's healthy, he'll be the starter next.
Yeah. Tim?
I got to go Nick Bosa, and I got to pinpoint one play in particular. It was week 12 against the Saints. Niners are up 13-0. There's about 4 minutes left. It's 4th down, and Bosa comes in for the sack. But that's not really, the crux of the play is just how Bosa anticipated the snap. So when the play actually happened, I thought he was offside. The announcer thought he was offside. But when you go back and look at the replay, he anticipates the snap so well and is so fast off the ball that the left tackle had no chance. Bosa comes around, makes the sack, and the 49ers win 13-0. So that play just epitomizes what a talent Nick Bosa is.
Yeah, I mean, and again, obviously Defensive Player of the Year. Hopefully there's a bookend this year that gets him out. I mean, obviously with Hargrave joining us, it's going to be also big, but that gets into more of next year and the defense. For me on the good shit is the offensive line. Last year about this time, the big concern was Alex Mack had retired, Lincoln Tomlinson had gone to the Jets, Aaron Banks was a mystery, and we Burfer was Brunskill, right guard, and then I actually ended up being a strength. You've always got Trent Williams, but Alex, Aaron Banks played really well. Jake Brendel was a all pro alternate. And, between Spurford and Brunskill had a really solid offensive line that was able to, for the most part, protect the quarterback and obviously provide a lot of running room for CMC and Jordan Mason and Elijah and Juice. So yeah, I think the offensive line was really just really good stuff that happened. Tim, anything else that comes up with some good shit?
Well, I think I've already said, I think just the perseverance of the 49ers, how many teams, I don't know if I've ever seen a team in NFL history that has gone through 3 quarterbacks and reached the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
So I think that alone just says, hey, this is a system that works. Has it achieved, the ultimate, the Super Bowl? No, but this is a team that can continue to put itself in position to achieve that. And that's all you can ask for is an opportunity.
Yeah. I'm also going to put another piece of good shit out there, which is Brian Greasy, to your point of the 3 quarterbacks. Do you get there with the 3 quarterbacks without a really good quarterbacks coach like Greasy? And I didn't think much of the hire, but he did great. So, Brian, any other good shit from last year?
They did have a 12-game winning streak, so that was pretty impressive. After the Chiefs game, they won the last 8 regular season games, and then they won the first 2 playoff games. So that's pretty good. So
yeah,
I'd have to say that was it.
I'll throw one more in there. You said, about some good stuff. Well, when you've got colleagues you work with who are Cowboys fans and you come in on Monday, January 23rd, and you see them in the office, and the one thing that just comes in your mind is strut. Just strut. You don't even need to say a word. Just strut.
The Cowboys go to Super Bowl next year, right?
Oh, I know the Cowboys go to the Super Bowl.
All right. Well, there's always 2 sides of the coin, so we got to talk some bad shit. And for me, it was the first game of the season, the monsoon in Chicago, and it was like, are you freaking kidding me? They just looked a little bit off. Dre Greenlaw had, I don't know how many times he knocked somebody out of bounds and threw a flag. We were trying the Trey Lance Debo fumbled, Trey Lance experiment of running between tackles, which didn't really do so hot. And of course, Justin Fields just finds Dante Pettis all by himself in the rainstorm. It was just like, this game is just not happening for us. And like I do every year, I go down to my brother's and let's just say it was not a happy mood at Shea Cash room. So Brian, any bad shit on your radar?
Well, we talked about the playoff loss, so that would probably be the biggest doo-doo on the season for me. But I don't that's it. I mean, like if I was to just, I know there were some really good wins and some like really awesome plays, and we brought in McCaffrey and we have Kittle, but to me, I think I'm still just going to linger on the fact that we lost the NFC Championship game. Well, we probably could have won it as long as we had some quarterbacks, but that's my bad shit for the 22 season.
And Tim, you want to round out the
yeah, I think we've talked about the NFC Championship. We've talked about the quarterbacks going down. I'm going to go with somebody I had really a lot of high hopes for in 2022. It just did not work out, unfortunately, and that's Javon Kinlaw. I thought after his surgery and his rehab that he was going to be able to come back and really be a force in the middle. And we saw some flashes against in week 1 against the Bears, but it just never came together. And we saw very much so in the championship, he was just really not able to hold his ground, and he was getting moved around quite a bit. I know he's a good guy. I know he's been through a lot. He's been trying to rehab it, but it just did not come together. So I don't see him staying with the Niners. I do hope that, whatever the next chapter for him is, that he is successful.
Yeah, I also wanted him to do well just to shut up Grant Cohn. But
Well, you said it, but I didn't. But yeah, I was right there with you. I really wanted to see him just to say, yeah, in your face, pal. But
well, anyway, that brings us to kind of the end. And one thing we do every week is we talk about stuff we bought on Amazon because it's sponsored by stuff we bought on Amazon when you click one of the links below. So this week, what did we buy on Amazon? So for me, we bought more Jibbits for Crocs. So I have two little girls. We're in the summertime.
I don't
now,
even
they're
I
wearing
don't even know
Crocs.
what that is.
What
is that?
It's little doodads that you stick into the holes of Crocs that make them more unique. That's it.
I see.
It's a
I'm very
thing.
old.
So you can do like
Yes.
a rainbow or like a Disney character
Princesses.
or like,
Yeah. So we bought
yeah,
puppy Jibbits.
SpongeBob.
I think it's we're brought to you by Jibbits, which will soon be in a landfill
Yes.
somewhere in eastern Pennsylvania. So, Tim,
Oh, well, this week is brought to you by Tesla Model 3 air filters. Because when you want your inside of your Tesla smelling good and not from mold, you need to get a new Tesla Model 3 air filter. And that's all I got.
Does it smell better?
It does. It does. Now, it's not the new car smell, but it is the neutral smell.
There you go. And
It is
Brian?
not the I left these shoes smelling. I left a pair of shoes out in the rain all night kind of smell that I had previously to the air filter, but it's a good smell.
Neutral's fine.
On that note, yes, let's go to Brian.
All right. Well, as you know, I do have and speaking of hygiene and keeping things clean, I do have a teenage son. So I did buy him his first shaving kit this week from Amazon. Harry's, sponsored by Harry's razors, shaving cream, and aftershave. So that is on the way.
Nice. Does he have like
Nice.
four whiskers where he's like, gotta get that one today. Gotta get that one today.
Well, I mean, you guys all remember it looks like, a little hair down below,
Yeah.
on your chin. So
Yeah.
looks like an armpit hair. So,
Yeah.
All right.
When am I gonna have the goatee? Not for a while.
That takes time.
All right. Well, Niners Nation,
Next-
thank you for tuning in.
Next week, we'll discuss the first time each of us tried to shave and the results. In my case, there was a little bit of blood.
Yes.
I think everyone did.
Yeah.
All I know
This
is I took
awful.
is all I know is that mom gave me one of her big lady leg shaving razors and said, "Here you go," and off I went, and out came the Neosporin very soon after that.
With shaving cream or no shaving cream?
Oh no, they were shaving. There was what my dad would ever buy from thrifty drugstore when that was still in existence, and it was something like Barbasol extra foamy, thick, tough beard. It's something that is probably banned now. So, but I slathered it up, and we were going to get those 4 whiskers.
A pair of
Hey, Sam, I
scissors
have a
would have been
question for you.
safer.
Probably, yes. Oh, can't wait. And then we got to wrap this up because I don't like where this conversation's going.
Yeah.
Fire away.
One question for Tim. Why don't you, when we have our Niners talk text message, why don't you text us back during game days, during like the actual game? What are you doing? What are you
Stressing.
doing in your
I'm stressing.
in your man cave?
Usually pacing, usually sitting and being very, very, very tense.
So, Brian, I'll
see-
relate a story to you on having watched many a game with my brother. So I came down for the NFC Championship against the Packers, and the Niners, obviously during that game, and especially in the first half, literally ran away with it. My brother didn't say anything. He didn't move from the couch. He didn't say a word during the entire first half. I mean, the Niners were rolling. And
Oh, yeah.
at the end of the
Most of
first
had
half, he
200
just looks at me and
yards
goes
that
like,
game.
yeah. He looks at me and goes, that's the best first half I've seen since 1994. I'm like, oh, you speak. So yes, that's what happens. He's tuned in. I guess that's the best way I could put it.
All right.
So if we were to rate ourselves, I would think Tim would be the most negative person. John is the most optimistic person.
Yeah.
And I'm somewhere in the middle of those two.
Yeah.
Not- you're trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah. I mean,
there you go.
let's just say when Josh Johnson came in, I'm like, okay, maybe there's a chance. So I was like, oh, it's over. Give it up. Anyway, on that note, thank you, Josh Johnson, for being a Niner for just a little while. And we're going to wrap it up. But thanks for tuning in. And we're looking forward to have you listen to our next podcast where we're going over the 2023 season. So peace out, Niners Nation.
Later.